This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb. Hello, everyone. This is Barbara Vocatis, host of Get Inspired with Dr. Barb, podcast on innovation in education, on which I interview wonderful, wonderful people who have something to contribute to innovation in education. And for me, innovation in education does not necessarily have anything to do with technology, but often with how we think maybe differently from what we thought yesterday about how we can support children's experiences with education so they get better, so kids experience education as something more and more empowering. That's what I think it is when I think of innovation in education. But I constantly evolve with the way I think about innovation in education, and everybody has a different opinion on that, I bet. And one of the incredible fields when I think of education is animal-assisted intervention. Many schools never even saw a therapy animal still. And I'm not saying that every school has to, but I think this is a field that should be open to every school to consider to introduce, because impact is incredible. And I've experienced it myself because I am a therapy dog handler too. And therefore, I love to bring people who are doing something important in this area, and today is not an exception because we have a fabulous, fabulous guest. Her name is Dr. Taylor Chastain Griffin, and I will just speak, when I speak to Dr. Chastain Griffin, I'm just going to use the name Taylor because we collaborate together. I belong to the organization she has an important role in. So Taylor is executive director of a very important organization. I belong to it as well. It's called Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals. But that's not the only role she has. She is also director of Animal Assisted Intervention Advancement in Pet Partners. And Pet Partners is one of the largest, I think, dogs therapy animal organizations, whereas Associations of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals is a little bit different organization. And I think I'm just going to let her speak about the differences between these two. But by background, Taylor is mental health counselor, but she's been just taking on a lot of roles, and it's amazing that what she's doing is also trying to unify the field of animal therapy animal organizations, because there's a lot of them. It seems like each is doing something a little bit different, but there is an attempt, right? Really great attempt to unify what we do in the field and how we approach animal assisted intervention. Welcome, Taylor, to the show Get Inspired with Dr. Barb.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Could you then, if you would like to add a little bit to your background, and also if you could explain the difference between these two organizations, partners, and AAAIP, that would be great.
Absolutely. Well, I think the most true thing about my background is that I'm a dog lady through and through, and so that's really directed everything in my career. I really, really believe in the power of the human-animal bond, and I've seen it in my life. I have a background as a dog trainer and a rescuer, and I don't think I've had less than 7 dogs in my home at any given time over the last decade. So they're some of my greatest teachers and motivation for doing this work. So as you said, I went to school to become a mental health counselor, and thought I would be there forever with my menagerie of animals, helping people in different ways. But as I got into the field, I got concerned because there was a lack of standards and understanding and accessible resources. So that directed me to the organizations where I work now. So Pet Partners serves volunteer handlers who go places like hospitals, schools, nursing homes. So if someone is volunteering with their dog, then Pet Partners is the organization for them. But a few years ago, we launched AAAIP, or the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals, to serve people who bring their animals into their professional role. My background as a counselor, I remember being so confused, Googling everything and being like, where is my organization? What standards do I follow? And I couldn't really find anything. And the same is true for teachers. educators, occupational therapists, dentists, lawyers. There are so many fields where therapy animals are showing up. So we exist now to provide those standards, certification, best practices, and like you said, come together to really advance what I think is just one of the most powerful interventions on the planet.
I love how you said the most powerful intervention. And I can see how powerful it is with my own eyes, right? When I take my therapy dog to the classroom. But it's amazing how many people don't know about it. They don't know its power. And thinking for children, especially for children, because I am an educator and I'm just trying to do what I can to make education better for children, especially during these times. It can be confusing times, full of noise, social media, of course, working busy parents, schools that are like busier than ever before. But really, as we think about like what makes education better for children, I think that we need a little bit of like more access for schools, for teachers, for principals. Do they have access to knowing what would make these experiences better for children and in a way that's really cost effective? Because we hear from schools, we spend that money on this, that much money. Now we know how much money it's going to cost. There is a new law in New York State, because that's where I am, for children can't bring the phone on the bus, on the school bus, but then in school, those phones have to be stored in special like compartments. They call them caddies, whatever that is. And there's so much money that is spent on these places, whatever it is, to store these phones. Can you imagine? And because
Wow.
they cannot be just put away somewhere in the classroom, right? This is
Yeah.
personal device that it belongs to a student, and then they have to collect them before they go on the bus again home. And there's so much money spent on these things because it cannot be done in any other way. But then, do the principals, do teachers know that there is something powerful you can access just by knowing where to go and who to ask, right? And it's access to therapy animals. And by the way, not just to dogs, but there's other therapy animals. And I remember when we talked on a different occasion for a mini conference that you even mentioned therapy rats. And I was, from that moment, I've been talking to everyone, do you know that there are therapy rats? And everybody is just like, what?
Yep.
It's really interesting. What do you think is the problem with schools, principals, administrators, teachers, like not knowing that something like that exists?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question because it is such a holistic, really low risk, low cost intervention. I think there's kind of a couple of issues at play. And number one is that the field just really hasn't standardized, as I talked about. So I think there's a lot of hesitancy because people think that, we're just buying vests on Amazon and putting them on our dogs and calling them a therapy dog. And so people don't understand that this is a true field with academic background and research and best practices that are available. And I do think there's a lot of hesitance about the risk of, the perceived risk of bringing an animal into a school setting. But, as an organization that helps to mitigate those risks and has information about how many incidents do occur, which is very, very rare, all things considered, and especially rare if the provider has awareness on how to keep everyone in the intervention safe. Some of that red tape really disappears when you provide education. And the number one thing we see happen is it takes a long time to get a therapy animal program started in a school. And as soon as it does, the stakeholders are shocked at how much more therapy animal programming they need and want. Like they cannot keep up with demand. The impact is so incredible that now, one therapy dog's not enough and we need many.
Exactly. This is absolutely amazing. Now, how do you think if somebody wants to, that's what I hear, number one thing, well, allergies, this or that, what if children are afraid of dogs because that happens too? And I think these are the issues that probably make principals, administrators think, we just don't want to deal with this, right? We don't want to deal with this, being afraid of legal things too. But again, those legal situations and fear of them occur if you don't do it right, if you don't work with the right organizations, right? If you let the dog in another way that is not exactly, maybe that wasn't even a certified dog. I heard all kinds of situations, all kinds of issues. So again, number one thing is, from what I hear you to, knowing where to turn to in order to learn about the program, how it can be done, and learn how to initiate it. And what would you advise to administrator, principal, teacher? And I know the principals are gatekeepers. I mean, if you want to bring the therapy dog to the school, you turn to the principal. That's the only person really who says yes or no. Where these people can go to or write to or turn to just find out all this important information, how to start.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and you no longer have to reinvent the wheel in this space, which you did for a long time because it was hard to find people who were doing this work and to know if they were doing it well. If you're just getting started, principals, superintendents, teachers, educators are really encouraged to come check us out at the Association of Animal Assisted Intervention Professionals. We do calls all the time to just provide education, to talk about which template documents we have, to talk about our insurance and best practices, and very clear and effective ways to work against things like phobias or allergies. There are a lot of school systems out there who've done this well. Our board chair is a superintendent himself, so we have those best practices to share. It can be as simple as downloading our templates and tailoring them to your school, and then you can have the infrastructure set up so that you're ready to offer this to your community.
This is so cool. And this kind of, I would say, consultation, right? Somebody calls or emails, you can consult with somebody else who works in the organization. And is this provided for free, or like this kind of like sort of initial information, right? Directing people what to do, where to go.
Yeah, so we're always more than happy to connect with people, find out where we are, and then show them which of our resources are the best. So, of course, we have membership, we have coursework online that's available, certification. But anytime someone's interested, we encourage them to just reach out, and we will connect with you and then connect you to the resource that's right for you.
That is so incredible, because knowing where to start, so you do things in the right way, so you don't just get into some risky situations when you end up inviting dogs. And I even sometimes hear these horrible stories about people having puppies in schools. I mean, it still occurs, and it really is. I don't understand how this is possible, but it's just doing things and collaborating with schools who just don't know what's right. Right? They don't know about this field that much, and sometimes they collaborate with people who are not doing it in the right, even legally, right? Like, not, just amazes me how it happens, but it does happen. But now, if you could speak to someone such as principal, superintendent, or a teacher about the power of this practice, the power of introducing a therapy animal to the classroom, what is some potential impact that they can see for their children and for themselves probably too, as teachers?
Yeah, definitely for themselves too. So as a researcher, we have some empirical language to explain what these animals do. But as someone who's done this for a long time, I know that the research doesn't even begin to capture the things that I've seen because they're really hard to describe. I think the emotional benefits of having an animal in the classroom is so tangible. There's kind of a grounding effect, I think, and I've been able to really get kiddos to calm down and to focus in when we have the animal as one of our guides and motivation. And the social emotional learning piece is really big as well. So part of my background, I worked in the Department of Juvenile Justice with young incarcerated kids who had oftentimes really struggled with, the social emotional learning and understanding, empathy and action and perspective taking. And so we would teach that as well. And then when we get into really, applied learning, there's so much ways, as you know, to incorporate the animal reading programs. And I love how you do math programs even with a therapy animal. So there's so much that can be done. And the animal being there tends to enhance whatever the provider's specialty is in a really interesting way. I've never found another kind of supplemental intervention that works like that, where it can kind of come along whatever you're doing and infuse your programming if done right.
This is totally incredible. And I recently interviewed someone who is also a therapy dog handler or partner. That's a better word. And she says, well, I am inspired by what you're doing. And here I am collaborating with this teacher. And it's really so cool how this collaboration can start. It can be just start by the collaborating teacher and therapy dog partner just laughing at something that happened in the classroom, and then they just why don't we do this, why don't we do that. It's just by being with each other, collaborating, having fun, and then taking it to another level. And it's not a complicated level because these
Right.
activities are so simple, aren't they? They're
Yes.
so simple. I would like to ask you also about some other therapy animals. So I work only with my therapy dog, and that's the type of animals that usually come to schools. But there are other therapy animals, and there are not many organizations, actually, from what I know, that certify other therapy animals. Mostly they are therapy dog organizations. But Pet Partners, one of the organizations that certifies other therapy animals. If you could tell us what other therapy animals are certified and just like how that works in school, because I could imagine for some kids, maybe dog is not a good option. So
Yeah.
who would choose these other therapy animals and why? That is really interesting for me too.
Yeah. It is. It's such an interesting topic. So at Pet Partners, we have 9 different species. Dogs are our most common, but we have mini horses, donkeys, pigs, alpacas, rabbits, rats, birds, guinea pigs. Can't remember if I mentioned them. So many different species. The way we select our species at Pet Partners is based on our understanding of their behavior enough that we could be advocates for their welfare, and then our understanding of their infection, prevention and zoonotic disease. So we want to make sure that we have all those mitigation practices in place to keep everyone safe and healthy. And even at AAIP, we accept those species and even have some professionals who've come in with other species like goats and chickens for more farm-based activities. So it's been really fun to expand our understanding of how different species can be impactful. And it's so important because, like you said, not everybody is a dog person. And so cats, I don't know if I mentioned them, one of our really growing species of therapy animals that we see. And so when it's in a school-based system, it can be a little bit more tricky because a cat, for example, is probably not going to thrive walking through a hallway that's really busy. We have to think about where these animals will do well, but we have some that, might be in the school counselor's office and it's their setup and they're comfortable and they visit with students who come in, or kind of the elevation of what previously would be class pets, so like guinea pigs or rabbits. And so, really elevating them to become therapy animals so that we can ensure their welfare and ensure they're being incorporated in the most impactful way. So, it's not just that the pet is there in the classroom, but how can we actually really bring this pet into interventions? So, it's an ever expanding world of whether it's an animal coming in to visit for a couple of hours a week or an animal staying in an office setting. We have openings for more than just dogs.
That's amazing. It sounds like you're also open to introducing more species, like possibly, right? Because it's like who says that certain species cannot be a therapy animal? It just depends on the nature, disposition, but also on the environment they will be in. So that is very, very cool. And I wonder, Pet Partners as an organization that's pretty good sized and has different animals too. Somebody, let's say, I don't know, Texas or whatever, would they be able to collaborate with Pet Partners and let's say look into if they can get, let's say, therapy cat maybe in their like counselor office or something like that? Like how far Pet Partners is reaching as far as states?
Yeah, we're actually international, so we have a
Oh, here you
very
go.
large presence. So if you're somewhere and you're looking for a volunteer team to come in, then there's actually a place on the Pet Partners website where you can post a volunteer opportunity that goes out to our handlers. So if you say, I'm really looking to see if we have a therapy cat team in this area, then we would send an email out to them and see if we can connect you to come. And if we don't have a presence in your area at Pet Partners, then we have a pathway. So if you have someone in your community who has a pet who would be really good for this work, please refer them to us at Pet Partners and we can work with them to become one of our official teams. We have an ever growing need for more therapy animals and we're just looking for people who can help us make that happen.
That's really nice. So you can just even like recruit someone and like, well, you could go
Yeah.
to this place, to the school, but you have to have some paperwork, right? You have to be officially certified. So maybe
Yes.
bring your cat and we will help you. Uh, that's just so amazing because not everybody knows these things. It's like even I get questions like, what do you do? How do you become certified? Where do you go? Really, regular person doesn't know that.
Right.
They have a dog and then thinking maybe my dog could be a therapy dog, and then they DM me because
Yeah.
they see that I have a therapy dog. So what do you do? How do you do it? Where do you go? And not every therapy dog organization can reach pretty far. A lot of them
Right.
are pretty local, right?
Right.
And for instance, if somebody turns to you to triple AIP, would you
Mm-hmm.
also recommend other therapy organizations too? If there would be a request that, let's say, pet partners cannot fulfill or something like that, would you connect them with others too, or not so much?
Yeah, so we believe there's such a need for therapy animals that we are a fan of anybody doing this work. Now, it's important though that you people understand there are standards. So there's even a
Right.
website called therapyanimalstandards.org that are not just what we at Pet Partners think are best practice, but what a field at large thinks is best practice. So if you're looking at a therapy animal organization, just make sure their policies and procedures are in line with those standards. Not all of them are. So these are things like time limits on the volunteer visits, avoiding raw diet, which we, understand can be controversial, but is very important to protect, zoonotic infection prevention issues. So look at those standards and then make sure that any organization you're working with adheres to those.
That's very important. So someone who's listening, they can either go through triple AIP, or if they want to contact an organization that is not even associated with you, right, with triple AIP, but it's important to kind of like verify them, like
Yeah.
what they do, what their standards are. Do they match standards that are just generally meant to describe what's acceptable really for a therapy animal? Because sometimes we hear about how often therapy animals go on visits, and sometimes I have a feeling that the therapy dog partner is almost like proud of how many visits they can
Yeah.
make. And but it really is just so important to understand that these visits have to work with the therapy animals. They have to enjoy them. They have to give consent
Yeah.
to be a therapy animal. And if they don't like certain situations, they really we should withdraw them from the classroom, from the visit. And this is kind of a area that's still developing, I think, too, with therapy dog organizations. When I got certified with my dog, nobody was telling us about that at all.
Right.
It wasn't a topic that existed, and I learned a little bit more myself too about it too. What do you think what are some areas that this field, therapy dog organizations, animal assisted intervention, and there's of course different terms describing the field.
Yeah.
What are some directions you would like it to go into, how it should develop, and what you think is in place also for triple AIP too?
Yeah, one of the things you kind of touched on it there at the end too, and you said there's different terminology. One of the calls that we're making right now, actually, we have a position paper out, is on picking things to be consistent about because we have historically not been a very accessible field to know, best practices. So,
Mhm.
we're taking a strong stance. Even there's some debate right now on changing the terminology away from the word animal assisted interventions, and we think that's the wrong step. We think we need to embrace what the field has been called and move forward and really focus on increased accessibility and really focusing on things that impact animal welfare like you talked about, because it's not just animal welfare for the sake of welfare, it's for the sake of safety. Where I get really worried that something's going to go wrong is that dog who's overworked, who's not being pulled away when they need to be pulled away, or their setting has not been set up in a way that's mindful of what they need. Yeah, I was always so shocked in school when there were whole entire courses on like art therapy and play therapy, but nothing on animal assisted therapy where I'm bringing a dog with teeth to interact with my clients. So we really need to think about best practices from that, serious position, and then come together as a field on what is really moving best practices forward. And as we grow, I just hope that we'll start to understand more about how this intervention appears in different settings. So I can't wait for the day when AAIP has a division of educators that talk specifically about what they're doing in the classroom, in elementary classrooms, middle and high, across different curriculum. I think this intervention is so powerful that we could have thousands of members from each discipline really moving the field forward, and that's the goal for us as we look into the future.
These are some amazing goals. And also from what I've noticed too, by doing more of this work and just like going to some conference just to, and just belonging to the organizations, that what happens is that this is not a topic it's not a very good word, but let's use it, covered in studies in educational institutions that educate teachers. This is not a topic that you would ever hear about at all. I mean, of course, still now, the topic of sort of connection between mental health and education has not been really a big topic at all in education. Right now, some things start to change, but the change is still not big, sort of divorced from education, and still.
Wow.
So I think that there is something really wrong as far as what's going on in my field. Of course, my students learn from me about that, about the power of animal-assisted intervention. I do make sure that I talk about it. Of course, I have to share it. This is something I do. I see how powerful it is. But normally, in educational institutions that educate future teachers and current teachers, this is not a topic at all. And I think that's probably something that we can do more somehow to bring this awareness to these institutions, because this is not happening. I guarantee you're not going to hear it from anyone, from any professor. This is not something, unless somebody hears about it, or let's say my colleagues from my department, they know what I'm doing. So occasionally I will be invited to a group of students who are future teachers. So they'll learn about it and they will be like, wow. And they'll be sitting with their open mouths in the classroom, hearing me giving all these examples. And like what you said, Taylor, it's not, I mean, you can list research and all that, but if you tell a story of what your dog did and what kind of impact it had on the child or another person, that is really, that moves the needle, and people are like, oh my gosh, can we learn more about it? What do you do? Can you tell us more? Can you come to another like presentation or something like that? So I think if this is maintained, meaning that these educational institutions are not, nobody talks about this to their future teachers, they will not know much about it.
Right. Yeah. We need to get the word out. We need to get the word out that
We
this
need
is
to
even an
get the
option.
word out more. We do a lot of our conferences, I think, presentations that are within our field, but also we need to do some more inclusive type of, I guess, activities, events in which we invite teachers, future teachers. They are the ones that really, who can really like move the needle, I think. And they need to know that. They need to know that. I often tell them, you're going to learn a lot of things here in this institution, but honestly, a lot of these books will not help you in the future if you get a kid that will be hard to teach and you're going to struggle, and you can look at the textbook, but you're not going to find any answers there. So maybe bringing an animal in a responsible way, that might make a big difference to you.
Yep. I know. And teacher satisfaction, all of these things that we haven't explored a lot of, but we hear anecdotally there's a real impact.
So here's just so much work to do, and it can be done, but strategically, but just awareness of it, right?
Yeah.
It's important too. It was just such a pleasure to have you today on the show. And I've learned some new things, and I'm sure our audience did too. And if you could tell our wonderful audience where they can follow you, maybe not necessarily find you directly. Well, it might happen. The DM might happen, but where on which social media platforms are you, and also the organizations? That would be great.
Absolutely. So you can check out our organizations. It's petpartners.org and AAAIPonline.org. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. And I also have a YouTube channel and an Instagram under Dr. Dog Lady, where I share information, of course, specific to therapy animals, but also just about all things human animal interaction. I heard that bark right on time. I love it. Right, that's on brand for the Dr. Dog Lady, so I love it.
There was the bark. It had to happen, I think, because of the topic. Thank you so much, Taylor, and thank you, our wonderful audience. We'll see you on social media. Please make sure to follow the show so you don't miss the episode, and follow Dr. Chastain Griffin. Thank you so much. Here's another bark again. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. This is Get Inspired with Dr. Barb.